Thank you for joining us for our All Souls Day Service of Remembrance. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Our Lord of creation and history, we give you thanks for all of our relatives and friends that we have said goodbye to throughout this past year. We thank you for giving them the rest that they have earned, and we ask for your help in keeping their memories alive and passing their legacy along to upcoming generations. In your name we pray. Amen. On this occasion, we are honoring long lives well lived. You may recall from Sunday school the story of Abraham and Sarah, who had their first child when she was 90 and he was 99. Well, if you look it up in Genesis, it turns out that Sarah went on to live to 127 and Abraham to 175. As we recall the stories of the folks being honored today, I ask you to notice just how many people among these generations also lived on into their 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s. And it is our privilege to honor them in our own small way. The traditions of All Hallows Evening, All Saints' Day, and All Souls' Day are believed to have originated in Europe sometime during the 600s through the 900s. These ancient traditions later gave rise to our modern celebration of Halloween as well. However, the original idea was to offer a commemoration of all the faithful departed. In the Presbyterian tradition, I was taught to say that someone has entered the church triumphant. Here at Westminster Oaks, in this ecumenical setting, we expand the idea to honor everyone with some special moment or detail. I lost my own mother to cancer 20 years ago this past summer at the age of 66. A reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution drove out to interview me as I was boxing things up at her townhouse in Decatur, Georgia. And it meant something to me that the reporter was impressed that my mom had gone on hikes with the Sierra Club to clear the trails for other hikers, and asked me about her many accomplishments. And she wrote a nice article honoring my mother, Lee Phillips, in the Atlanta newspapers. So throughout the year, our volunteers and I follow up with each of you and ask if you'll contribute to our archive here. We will show the photos and share the highlights of the memories that you have shared with us as of today, October the 15th. If you would like to add anything further, please contact us and we can include your contribution into our print version of this archive, which includes the complete obituary or story that you have sent us. We call it the Life Story Project, and we keep it in the reading area here on campus. If you have taken an interest in programs about history and genealogy, such as Who Do You Think You Are, or explored your own relatives through websites such as Ancestry.com, then I invite you to recognize that the archive we have here is one way of preserving the legacy of your family for generations to come. Let us turn now to the brief highlights that we have time for and the photos that have been sent. William Aldridge earned an MBA and is remembered as flight instructor, real estate broker, business owner, husband of 55 years to his wife Connie, father, grandfather, and friend to many. He was born during World War II and lived to the age of 76. Pace Allen served as a tail gunner on an A-20 bomber during World War II and was awarded the Purple Heart. Dolores Anderson served as administrative assistant to the Secretary of the Department of Health and Rehabilitation Services, and therefore serving in the head office of the state's largest agency under 7 different governors from 1969 through 1995. And so she is remembered for, quote, calmly riding out the storms, end quote. Of course, we mean political storms. And we all remember her diplomatic smile here as well. Kay and Gus Ansley were married in 1953, and they were faithful members of Faith Presbyterian Church, where she was presented an honorary life membership in the Women of the Church. She was a member of garden clubs at the local, city, state, and national levels, and served as president of the Tallahassee Garden Club. Kay and Gus enjoyed a 49-year marriage, and Kay lived to the age of 91. Maureen Antworth enjoyed a 30-year marriage, and the couple raised 3 children. Maureen served as a nurse in surgery and surgical administration for nearly 26 years at University Community Hospital in Tampa. Some of her favorite memories are spending time with her family at the Lake Ozarks, at the beach in Ship Bottom, New Jersey, and Thanksgivings at St. George Island. Joe Barkley was working the college cafeteria scrape table, where people dropped their dirty dishes, when he noticed Phyllis coming through the line and started calling her Sunshine. They became engaged as he approached graduation, and they enjoyed 64 years of marriage. Bruce Berger grew up as an Air Force brat, living all over the world, and he lettered in several sports at Paris American High School in Paris, France. He served in the U.S. Army as a cryptographer during the Cold War, passed his CPA exam on the first try, and became the comptroller for Mobile, America. Milton Beavis served in the Marine Corps, practiced law, and enjoyed saltwater fishing. Milton and his wife Mary were married 41 years. Anne Bonifay lived to the age of 94. Dorothy Dot Bowen passed away just 1 month shy of her 101st birthday. Anna Margaret Luther Park Brandt went on 33 cruises, took up golf at the age of 78, lived to age 101, and is survived by 8 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandsons. Marjorie Brown loved singing in the choir and teaching Sunday school and Bible study at her church. Marjorie and her husband Emery were married 65 years, and she lived to the age of 97. Paul Jackie Butler grew up just the road from here in Quincy, Florida, where he served as deacon of Santa Clara Baptist Church. Carolyn Kane was graduated from Leon High School and Florida State. She enjoyed a 22-year career in the Florida Department of Management Services, where she had the honor of serving as statewide coordinator for Florida's State Awards Program, also known as the Meritorious Awards Program, and where she also met her husband Gerald Snyder, with whom she spent 25 happy years. Carolyn was passionate about many causes, including animals, racial freedom, and equality. A mission to Nairobi, Kenya, to support the education of young girls was life-changing for her. She was an active supporter of the LGBTQI community, and her spiritual home was the United Church on Mayhem. Carolyn and Gerald are survived by her stepchildren, grandchildren, 4 grandnieces, 5 great-grandnieces, and nephew, and goddaughter. Dr. Frank Castor was a sergeant in the 15th Air Force, 485th Heavy Bombardment Group, 830th Bomb Squadron during World War II. Between missions, he served B-24s in Venosa, Italy. Frank and his wife Marcy were married for 51 years, and Frank lived to the age of 97. Mary Ruth Snyder grew up on a farm in the hills of West Virginia in a house without electricity, running water, or central heating. Her mother sold eggs to help pay for her college education. Ruth was voted most popular of her high school class. While a student at West Virginia University, she met and married Professor Bill Childs. The couple raised 4 children, and all 4 earned graduate or doctorate degrees. Ruth Childs was proud of having once served coffee to Eleanor Roosevelt, and she lived to the age of 105. Billie June Clark grew up on a farm, had many cats, and rescued many cats, dogs, an egret, and a pelican. She liked to read and watch mystery stories, and usually could figure out the answer long before the final chapter. Billie was graduated from Chattahoochee High School in Florida State and served with the Florida Department of Financial Services for 30 years. She is survived by her husband of 52 years, Stephen, her sister, and daughter. Leonard Cohen lived to the age of 94. Richard Kahn drove his family from Tallahassee to the Republic of Panama in 1966 via the Pan American Highway to be a weather forecaster for the U.S. Southern Command. He later worked for the Inter-American Geodetic Survey, mapping the jungles of Central America, Venezuela, and Trinidad. As Scoutmaster for Boy Scout Troop Number 3 in Panama, he led his scouts on the Las Cruces Trail, which crosses the isthmus from the Atlantic over to the Pacific. Lloyd Walt Corey was graduated from Leon High School, Florida State, and the Air Force Intelligence School. He served in intelligence and academic administration in the Air Force, Department of the Treasury, and the Department of Justice. Carolyn Coward and fellow Westminster Oaks resident Annette Green figured out that they both attended Massey Business College in Jacksonville, Florida, They both stayed at the Jacksonville YWCA. They both also worked for the same company, Standard Oil, in the same credit department and under the same boss. And yet they did not meet each other until they came to live here at Westminster Oaks. David Custis was the son of a Presbyterian minister, and he maintained a heart for social justice all his life. Dave and his wife Joan set up their laptops in the fellowship hall of First Presbyterian Church, Tallahassee, and offered assistance with income tax preparation free of charge for those in need. Rear Admiral Henry Jefferson Davis served in the Navy and the National Security Agency. Jeff once offered a presentation at Westminster Oaks in which he showed us many situations the rest of us would never have heard of, including an operation to retrieve undetonated Soviet nuclear-tipped warheads from the bottom of the ocean. Rear Admiral Davis lived to the age of 91. James, or Jim Davis, taught chorus at the middle and high school levels in humanities, chorus, and art history at Brevard and Tallahassee community colleges. He sang or directed choirs for 70 years. He loved to cook, grow flowers, and share the results. I remember him for teaching music and humanities travel programs here at Westminster Oaks long before he moved in here, and also for his volunteer work with his wife Rochelle at First Presbyterian Tallahassee, Meals on Wheels, and with the homeless at the shelter. Jean Dink was a faithful member of Christ Presbyterian Church, and she lived to the age of 97. Angelina Draper lived to the age of 90. Jacqueline Durkee worked many happy years as an LPN for Dr. Sam Moore, who is also being honored here today. Her family shared that she enjoyed her time on the 5th floor of Oak South, which is also known as the party floor, and she lived to the age of 92. Gaylor, or Gail Edgeworth, was born in her grandmother's house in Fernbank, Alabama, and lived to the age of 97. During her teaching career at Florida State, she founded the FSU Historical Costume Museum. Ranko Ursig was an all-star baseball player in high school in Gary, Indiana. He served in the U.S. Navy as a radio operator and in the Pacific Theater. The Ursig family were lifelong members of St. Sava Serbian Orthodox Church in Gary, where Ranko is proud to see his name engraved on the World War II monument. Lee Abels Everhart built businesses in municipal codes and ordinances, mortgage banking, and construction, completing over 2,500 residential units, as well as commercial construction of office buildings, including Woodcrest Office Park and McClay School. He served as president of the Florida State Chamber of Commerce and was voted Florida's Builder of the Year by the Florida Home Builders Association in 1978. He served as city commissioner and as the mayor of Tallahassee, 69 through 72. He was also known for his secret North Carolina vinegar-based barbecue recipe sauce and for the Boston butts he grilled and served in the backyard for family and neighbors. Joe Fisher served as a forward observer in the Army Artillery during World War II, 1942 through 45, assisting General Patton in the advance across Europe, including the Battle of the Bulge. On one occasion, they came upon Nazi youth soldiers hiding in the grass, and all the youth surrendered. When they entered the towns, Joe took photos, capturing moments when German people reached out to embrace their Allied liberators. Jane Fletcher's husband, Al, shares memories of Jane singing in the choir, serving with Meals on Wheels, and going sailing with him. When they encountered stormy weather, Al would take down the sails and pull up the anchor while Jane took the helm. He says that Jane, or Sugar, or Shug, was the best thing that ever happened to him. Dr. Catherine Fontaine was an advocate for justice issues and equal rights and served as secretary on the board of the Leon County Mental Health Guidance Center and volunteered at the neighborhood health clinic, which provided medical care for the poor. She was an artist, wrote poetry, and a children's book, Have a Not N-O-T for Christmas and Always, meaning to choose to do without, teaching ethics and inclusion in her verse and illustrations. Dr. Fontaine lived to the age of 91. John Galliner enjoyed a career with Manpower Temporary Services Incorporated in St. Petersburg and Tallahassee. After retirement, he also worked for 20 years as a security officer at the Veterans Administration Outpatient Clinic here in Tallahassee. He was also a member of the Leon County Sheriff's Mounted Posse for many years. He also volunteered with the Florida Highway Patrol Auxiliary for 17 years. John and Loretta were married in 1992, and John became a part of a big Southern family who loved him dearly. He is survived by his wife Loretta, 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren, as well as by Loretta's family. Vicki Gleason lived to the age of 74. Ann Green was graduated from Florida State, taught special education at Raw Middle School here in Leon County for 27 years, and lived to the age of 84. William Groh developed commercial and residential real estate and founded several businesses, including the Storage Center in Tallahassee. Bill liked taking cross-country trips on his motorcycle and in his airplane, and 2 flying trips from Tallahassee to Alaska and back were some of the highlights of his life. Bill and his wife Alice were married for 55 years. Anna Lee Harris Henson was born in 1920 in Mitchell County, Georgia. She always said that since her father was a country doctor and her mother was a teacher, she would become either a nurse or a school teacher, and she became both. Anna was married at 18 and enjoyed a 39-year marriage before her husband passed away. The couple had 12 children, and she lived to the age of 99. Dr. Hadley Hazemeyer was a veteran of World War II and the Korean War. He practiced dentistry for 35 years, enjoyed a 68-year marriage to his wife Sally, and lived to the age of 93. Dr. Catherine Kitty Hoffman taught chemistry at Florida State, was associated with Florida State for 88 years, and the Hoffman Chemistry Building is named after her. Her children gave her birthday parties in our McGuire Center for her 100th through her 105th birthdays, and FSU President Dr. John Thrasher would come out each year for the occasion. Dr. Hoffman was honored with an obituary in the New York Times. LaDonna Hutchison grew up in a home in Ogalla, Nebraska, where she bathed in a tub in the kitchen. Water was heated in a tea kettle on a wood-burning stove. She didn't have a bathroom, and she was afraid of the spiders in the outhouse. LaDonna went on to live to the age of 93, enjoy a 68-year marriage to John, and the couple had 3 children. Their twin sons, Richard and Kent, came to visit here often, and their son Kent also contributed to our activities here. He would pull up in a van, and out would come 20 or 30 large djembe drums, and we all remember seeing residents playing together in giant drum circles in the health center and in the assisted living. We will always remember LaDonna's husband John's favorite saying, referring to life here at Westminster Oaks, "It's another day in paradise." M.D. Kelly was born during the Depression, the 11th of 12 children. In 1968, M.D. founded Kelly Sheet Metal Incorporated, which continues to thrive after over 50 years in business. He had the ability to visualize duct work issues and come up with innovative solutions, and he taught his family that most anything can be fixed with duct tape. He raised cattle and white-tailed deer, taking pride in growing bucks with large antlers. His Taliflo white-tailed deer farm became a place for learning and adventure for his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, including riding four-wheelers and petting fawns, and what happened at the camp stayed at the camp. Margaret King was a florist, gardener, wonderful cook, longtime member of East Hill Baptist Church, and lived to the age of 99. Marion Knapp liked to take walks around our campus, and she was always concerned about the well-being of the other residents around her. She lived to the age of 101. Sarah Court earned several master's degrees from Florida State and California State University, worked as a teacher and speech-language pathologist, enjoyed international travel, master gardening, and visits from their children and grandchildren. Noreen Bardil-Libitsky worked in nursing, had her own practice working with special needs children, and taught nursing. When Noreen was in her 20s, she earned the national championship in water skiing in the slalom, trick, and overall categories in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1960. She was champion in the trick category at the Masters Water Ski Tournament at Callaway Gardens, Georgia in 1960, overall Masters Ski Tournament champion in 1961, and she was inducted into the Florida Water Ski Federation Hall of Fame in 2006. Charlene Laystrom lived to the age of 88. Mildred Millie Little worked for Lincare, a health service company, and also in the FSU bookstore, and at the Florida Department of Weights and Measures, When her daughters were students at Rickards Senior High School, Millie volunteered in the school nurse's office, wearing a gray uniform, so she was known as the Gray Lady. Millie lived to the age of 91. Jessie Lovano Kerr enjoyed a long career in art education. She taught at Florida State and helped to build the art education department, won numerous awards, and served on many boards and committees, including the Getty Education Institute, part of the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. Jessie and Sandy Kerr enjoyed a 40-year marriage. Heinz Lubkeman began his professional career teaching high school English and history in Philadelphia, where he had the good fortune to be on a telephone tree with his school's very popular music teacher. Upon notifying her early one morning of a school snow day, he then asked if she had any plans for the day. A day of ice skating and hot chocolate ensued, and a wedding followed 6 months later. Heinz and Johnny were married 60 years, and Heinz lived to the age of 92. Michael Millardy served in Vietnam. His decision to come to Florida State was easy when he found out the girl-to-boy ratio. The GI Bill paid for school, and his sales job at Mendelssohn's men's store paid for his social life. He went to work in sales for National Cash Register until, while on a sales call, he saw a magical new machine called a Xerox. The next day he applied at Xerox, where he was quickly hired and where he would spend the next 25 years as one of their outstanding salesmen, and that is also where he met his wife-to-be, Joanne. When Elizabeth Betty Martin was 18 and living in Providence, Rhode Island, she and a coworker were out for lunch when the streets began filling with water. She and her coworker climbed up the steps of City Hall to join a crowd waiting out what turned out to be the Great New England Hurricane of 1938. Betty loved to play golf and is believed to have won at least 2 ladies' championships. She and her husband Bill were married for 60 years. The couple is survived by 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren, and great-grandma Betty lived to the age of 100. Nell Golden grew up on a farm in Jackson County. Passing a note in school with a boy led to a 45-year marriage to Ben May. Nell May worked at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles for 34 years. We here remember her attending our Friday morning chapel every week, and her family and friends who would drive up from Sopchoppy to join us on the ivy porch and then take her to lunch. And we are sad to say goodbye to everyone, but we are grateful that Miss Nell lived to the age of 93. Margaret McNeely lived to the age of 89. Edna Mead lived to the age of 94. Priscilla and Walter Reed Milliken were high school sweethearts, and they married after his graduation from West Point. Their life together took them to many places around the world, including Japan, Colorado, Massachusetts, and Northern Virginia. Priscilla Ruth Milliken devoted 37 years to visiting with her extended family, and she lived to the age of 94. Annabelle Mitchell enjoyed a long career with the state of Florida, serving with the State Parole Commission, as well as in the state correctional system, and implementing programs on behalf of women in corrections. She broke the glass ceiling in her field many times. She was the first woman in the United States to be named superintendent of a men's prison, and in 1972, Governor Reuben Askew appointed her to be the first woman parole commissioner. She is survived by her husband, Louis Wainwright, who also lives with us. I first met Dr. Sam Moore when he spoke at his father's service, who also lived here west of Strokes. And on that occasion, here in our chapel, he told the following story, that his father was one of the founding members of the Tallahassee Swing Band, and at one moment the band auditioned a new singer, but they did not hire her because her voice wasn't strong enough. Her name was Dinah Shore. Dr. Sam Moore served as a pediatrician. His work with children is remembered as legendary, as he had an exceptional ability to recognize signs of abuse, work with abused children, and teach his colleagues to recognize the signs as well. Barbara Murray lived to the age of 85. Carolyn Nation spent many winters at St. George Island, left behind many friends at 300 Ocean Mile, as well as at our Azalea Gardens, and is remembered as a light to every room that she entered. Catherine O'Quinn practiced dental hygiene in Panama City for many years. She was active with the Unitarian Universalist Church in Panama City and the Democratic Women's Club of Bay County. She was greatly loved by a wide circle of friends, colleagues, and family, and she lived to the age of 92. Eleanor Oven graduated from the University of Virginia School of Nursing, where she met her husband, Dr. Rainey A. Oven. The park on Thomasville Road is named for his sister, Dorothy B. Oven. Eleanor and Rainey were married 52 years, and Eleanor lived to the age of 99. Sarah, or Sally Overstreet, was born in Oak Park, Illinois. Sally and her husband Tom raised 4 children, and she became the proud grandmother to 6 and great-grandmother to 3, bragging on them endlessly. She is remembered for her overflowing decorating for every occasion and season, especially for Christmas, and gathering friends for FSU football games. Her family was happy to see her returning to playing the piano here at Westminster Oaks. Robert Owen served as a naval aviator during the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s. He flew over ships coming into Cuba, taking photos of men and women in bathing suits on the decks of the ships below, which he knew to be Soviet sailors in disguise. Even though his plane was unarmed, he still discovered bullet holes in his fuselage. He also wrote a story for me describing what it was like to make a landing on an aircraft carrier during a storm. He said he failed to catch the wire with his plane's tailhook 7 times before he finally caught it. And he told me that the movie The Perfect Storm brought that memory back to mind. Barbara Perush lived to the age of 81. Elbert Poppel was one of 5 brothers who served in World War II and the only one of the 5 to serve in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters. He saw active combat in the Philippines and was hit by shrapnel, but his helmet saved his life. He wore his World War II veteran's ball cap everywhere he went, and he lived to the age of 99. Dr. Dana Prue taught English literature, specializing in the medieval and Renaissance periods at the University of Southern Mississippi, Florida State University, and Florida A&M. She also played the part of a Florida widow named Maddie in the independent movie Gal Youngin, directed by Victor Nunez, which played at the Cannes Film Festival in France. She also played the part of Peaches, the mother of Melanie Griffith, in the movie Something Wild, also starring Jeff Daniels, and directed by Jonathan Demme. Dr. James Pumphrey was a star in baseball and football at Gainesville High School. James and his wife Lois were blessed with 4 children while he was still completing his education, so early in the morning he delivered newspapers, then went to class, and then in the afternoons drove an ice cream truck. He went on to become one of only 2 orthodontists in Tallahassee and practiced for 30 years. His wife and best friend Lois introduced him to tennis. They became mixed doubles partners, and he purchased a 1-court tennis facility and turned it into the Forest Meadows Racket Club. He also had a hand in creating the Cedar Lane, Bobbin Mill, Bobbin Brook, and Woodbrook residential neighborhoods, and lived here in Tallahassee for 60 years. William Rhodes retired as FSU Emeritus Professor of Chemistry and also served as Director of the Institute of Molecular Biophysics for 10 years. Bill loved studying and teaching the intricacies of thermodynamics and molecular chemistry, as well as contemplating the grand continuum of science throughout the universe. He also loved family camping trips and backpacking in the Appalachian Mountains. He loved classical music and contributed to WFSU-FM for over 50 years, and yet he also loved the music of Hank Williams and Patsy Cline. Bill and his wife Barbara were married for 62 years, and Bill lived to the age of 87. Margaret Rogers grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and worked as a flight attendant for Delta before meeting her husband Bill, and they were married at the Peachtree Roads Presbyterian Church. Peggy was so active in her community that she was later named Woman of the Year in Lake City, Florida. Her passion for service led her to become involved with the World Book Childcraft organization, involved with distribution of World Books to schools and families. She advanced to the level of World Book Division Manager. Peggy and Bill were charter members of Christ Presbyterian Church here in Tallahassee. Dr. Patricia Ann Rose, Ph.D., grew up in Clearwater, where she was a May Queen in middle school and a cheerleader in high school and an outstanding student. She attended what was then the Florida State College for Women, was awarded one of only 50 Danforth grants given in the United States, earned her Ph.D. at Columbia University, taught art history at Florida State for 30 years, and served as chair of the department for 17 years. John C. Russell served in the U.S. Navy in the North Atlantic from January 1944 until VE Day in 1945. The war ended while his ship was docked in Pearl Harbor, and so he was then tasked with delivering mail to the sailors on several islands throughout the South Pacific. Mady Shestapol reminisced with me about her happy memories of childhood in small towns in Mississippi. She was a devoted member of First Presbyterian Church, Tallahassee, and she lived to the age of 94. Betty Shepard worked at the Sears store in Live Oak, Florida, and as a result knew just about everyone in Live Oak. Betty and Tom Shepard were married in 1949. They lived together on their farm for 65 years, and they were married for 70. She worked on the farm, as well as with Tom's electrical company, and she helped him build churches throughout the Southeast with campers and mission. She loved singing in the church choir and joined the Heavenly Choir at the age of 88. Mary Simmons lived to the age of 99. Leon Sims was born in a sharecropper house on a farm in Suwannee County, Florida. He grew up on that farm, became student body president of Future Farmers of America, earned a bachelor's degree in agriculture, a master's degree in agricultural education, and a doctorate of education, all from University of Florida. He taught agriculture at the high school level and agricultural education at the college level, served on active duty with the U.S. Transportation Operation in Goose Bay, Labrador with the Army Reserves. He came to Tallahassee to work for the Florida Department of Education, received many awards for his work in vocational education, and was inducted into the Florida Vocational Association Hall of Fame in 1993. He taught a men's Bible study class for nearly 50 years at First Baptist Church in Tallahassee. Leon and his wife Miriam were married for 63 years. Leon lived to the age of 92, and the couple is survived by 2 daughters, 6 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandsons, as well as a host of loving nieces, nephews, and friends. John Sly practiced law for 49 years, first with Blue Cross Blue Shield, then with the firm Foley and Lardner, both in Jacksonville, Florida. Then came to Tallahassee to join what became the Florida Department of Children and Families. And in 2010, he was awarded the Claude Pepper Award, given to a lawyer whose character and accomplishments exemplify the highest ideals of government service. John and his wife Margaret were married 46 years. Mrs. Lee D. Sofer adored her family, faithfully served them in God, was deeply loved and admired, and will always be missed. Married to a pastor, she was also the favorite Sunday school teacher for children. She was resourceful, mastering the tasks of living, believing in the good about people, and embodied being a Proverbs 31 woman. Lee and her husband were married for 58 years, and Lee lived to the age of 90. Herbert Spires served in the Navy, starting in the boiler room aboard battleships, destroyers, aircraft carriers, and minesweepers. His ship, the USS Princeton, was stationed in mainland China at the moment the communist regime took over the country. So they had to leave, and the crew watched people on shore fleeing China by the thousands, an historical moment also captured in the movie The Sand Pebbles. Herbert and Sonny were married nearly 64 years, and he lived to the age of 89. Dorothy Jean Steele grew up playing the piano for the church choir. She married her high school sweetheart Bill and taught elementary school for 30 years. When she moved into Westminster Oaks, she played the piano at our hymn sings. She was a fan of the heroine of The Wizard of Oz since they shared the name Dorothy, and she lived to the age of 90. Harold Tull served in the Korean War. He was a supervisor with the Olin Corporation and a member of Good Shepherd Catholic Church. Harold and his loving wife Shirley were married 69 years, and Harold lived to the age of 91. Judith Judy Verano was baptized at the age of 52. She was active in her church, the Countryside Christian Center in Safety Harbor, Florida. She preached on the streets in Daytona Beach, and she rode for Jesus with the Christian Motorcycle Association, a Christian motorcycle gang, with emblems on their leather jackets. John Vlandis lived to the age of 90. Carol Wainwright was born to a railroad worker and homemaker, and she grew up in a small town of South Georgia, the 6th of 8 children. She is remembered as a devoted homemaker and mother who worked hard for her family, her church, and her community, and we remember her sense of humor, and she lived to the age of 87. Johnny Popel Ward graduated from Havana High School just up Highway 90 from here. She was married to Mr. L.E. Billy Popel for over 30 years until she lost him in 1977. They lived in Concord, Florida, where they owned and operated the Concord Poultry Farm. She later married Fred Ward, also of Havana, until she lost him in 2001. She loved to garden and arrange flowers for community events. She was a member of Salem United Methodist Church in Havana, and she cooked the best Southern fried chicken known to humankind. Johnny lived to the age of 92, and she is survived by 2 children, 2 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild, and 1 great-great-grandchild. Barbara Scarborough went to Florida State and to New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, where she met Joe Weber. Joe took her on an exciting and interesting journey through many years of church pastorates and Veterans Administration Hospital chaplaincy ministry, and she taught Sunday school and served on the mission field in Texas, New Mexico, Florida, and Tennessee. Barbara and Joe were married 67 years, leaving behind 4 children, including their daughter Debbie, who also served on the mission field, as well as their dear sons-in-law, grandchildren, and great-grandson. Barbara Weber lived to the age of 92. Robert Bob West served in the U.S. Army, stationed in Japan, 1946 through 47. He enjoyed a career of 40 years in the moving and storage business and served as chairman of the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce and founding chairman of Partners for Excellence, served with many other organizations, and served voluntarily as chaplain of the Florida House of Representatives for 37 years. Bob and his wife Naomi Jean, of nearly 70 years, spent their last years with us, and Bob left this world just a few weeks short of his 92nd birthday. He is survived by 2 sons, 2 daughters, and 25 grand, great-grand, and great-great-grandchildren. Megan Wilkins met the love of her life, Harold Hal Wilkins, on a blind date, and they were married 55 years. Leonard Lee Williams, Jr. worked at his dad's service station across the street from Leon High School as a teenager. He went to Florida State for graduate school and law school, and he met his bride-to-be, Ann Darling, at a study session at the Theta House. He was a trial attorney with the firm Williams Gautier. He was a season ticket holder of Florida State football for 40 years. Lee and Ann were married for 52 years. Jewel Willis lived to just 2 days short of her 96th birthday. Doris Winters is remembered by her family as an avid golfer, dedicated bridge player, international traveler, and FSU sports superfan. She was voted best dressed in high school, and she maintained her appearance and cut and styled her own hair and did her own manicures into her 90s. Doris married her college sweetheart Steve in 1943. When he shipped out to serve in the Pacific in World War II, Doris finished college and volunteered for the USO. After the war, Steve completed his fieldwork for his PhD in geology from Columbia University, and the couple spent summers in Wyoming, Colorado, and on a Hopi reservation in Arizona, living in a converted chicken coop with no running water. Doris washed their clothes in the river and had to ask folks on the reservation for help about how to avoid the wildlife and the skunks coming to visit them. The couple was a part of a group of around 200 young faculty members at Florida State, known as the 49ers, and Doris was busy with the Faculty Wives Club and played golf at the Capital City Country Club, where the family kept a membership for 55 years. Doris passed away at the age of 98 years and 8 months. Her mother, Sadie Kahn, also lived in our assisted living for 6 years, and she passed away at just 2 months shy of her 99th birthday. Let us do our best to remember our parents, grandparents, relatives, and friends, as well as the history of our nation and world that their time on this earth represents. To paraphrase the line from the TV series Game of Thrones, we will not see their like again. And now I need to offer a thank you for each of the people who have helped us out. Thank you to Lynn Kimmel for publicity. Thank you for Reaching out to families, making phone calls, our residents Gina McCulley, Mary Jane Robbins, Rochelle Davis, Suzanne Huff. Thank you for archiving, helping with the paperwork, Carolina Jimenez. Technical support, Bethany Wells. Thank you very much for putting the time and the effort into getting the PowerPoint ready, Kendra Freeman. Thank you for our nature photography, Gail Alexander and George Fong. And thank you for patience with recording me, Dakota Caroluzzi. And now let us bow our heads for closing prayer. Our Lord and Creator of all things, we thank you for the lives of our parents, relatives, and friends, and we ask that you help us remember them and pass along their memory to our own children, grandchildren, and upcoming generations. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you all for joining us.